It's October 22nd, 1992, Museum of Jewish Heritage, Video History Project. My name is Naomi Rappaport. I am speaking with Genia Litwok on tape number 1. Genia, would you please introduce yourself and give us a short biography about your life?
My name is Genia Litwok. I was born August 1st, 1927, in Litwok, Poland. I was the youngest of 3 children. My mother and father, I had a very big family. My mother had 2 sisters and 3 brothers. My father had at least 7 siblings, at least 7. It was a happy family. We were middle class. I went to school. We had a maid at home at all times. My parents, what I remember, if I think back, I remember singing, and I remember my parents dancing. My brother was 8 years older than me, so he was kind of a protector, and he taught me. I have nothing but very beautiful memories of my house. I remember holidays in my grandparents' house. My grandmother had a large, it was called a salon in Europe, which is a large, narrow room. And for the holidays, there were at least 40 people that would come from all over for Passover, for Seder, for Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur is something that every year when I go to the synagogue, I remember my grandmother would have an apple with ginger in it, just because everybody was fasting, and if you smelled that, it made you feel good. So all these little things that I remember. My childhood was very, very nice. I have absolutely no memory of. We lived in Lodz was a large town, and the place where my parents lived, where we lived, was a very nice neighborhood. I didn't come across any, it was not actually a Jewish neighborhood per se. It was mixed, a lot of Polish people and a lot of German people that lived, that were well off and could afford to live there. Now, that was something that I will tell you later what happened when the Germans came in, and how fast friends of my mother and neighbors turned around and became Germans instead of Polish citizens. Life was good. Every summer we went away during the vacation. My father, my brother, who was older already, they would come for weekends. I had a lot of friends. My sister was only 2 years older than me, so we had I know that she still is a little bit of a snob. She was very beautiful, and I was just cute. And my mother was smart enough to buy us the same clothes. This is something that stands out in my mind because I talked to my sister about it. She's the only one that's alive. That when she put on an outfit that I also had to go to school, she would change it because she looked better than me at that. I was just a little nice chubby girl, and she was a very beautiful girl. She still is. My parents were happy. The family was very large simply because my 2 grandfathers were brothers.
How did that happen?
How did that happen? I really don't know. They were I think that was at that time, if any people were well off or something, I don't know, they intermarried. It was, they say that sometimes it isn't a good idea because the children don't come out too well, but we did. It was all right. My brother was very bright and very handsome. My sister is great, and I think I'm doing all right. So it worked out well, but it was, so consequently, all my aunts and uncles would have been my family anyway. Mm-hmm. So it was a very large family. Mm-hmm. And a very happy family. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of singing, and it stands out in my mind. Mm-hmm. I remember in 1938, my parents and my aunts and uncles sitting in front of a very big radio, which we had. If you these are the old-fashioned, very big radios, and they were listening to Hitler giving a speech when he took over, when he went into Czechoslovakia. Mm-hmm. And there was an awful lot of shouting because that's the way he spoke. And the kids, you know, we were in 1938, I was 11. My sister was 13. We were like running around, not thinking about the war or anything. And there was a lot of shouting, and it was the first time that my father, who was basically a tremendous optimist, came over to us and said, please, let us listen to it. This is very important. We have to see what will be going on. There is a tremendous crisis coming on, but I wish you would do your talking and your singing and your playing in another room, which we did. This stands out in my mind. I do remember vividly the voice of Hitler when he spoke. I'm sure that everyone else has since heard his voice and knows how that sounds, especially, you know, to people that understand. We didn't understand. We were just having fun.
Did you understand German?
Do I speak German?
No, at that point, did you understand what he was saying?
Well, there was a lot of Hi Hitler and, you know, just the motions with the hands and Sieg, Sieg, Heil, that I could understand. I understood a little bit, yes, because we all, in Europe, you kind of languages are, you know, you listen. It's like going to another state, you go to another country. Mm-hmm. So you have to know languages. I also took German, and my sister took English. That's very interesting. She took English, one of the few, but she was 2 years older than me. She went to gymnasium, which is high school. I never made it, because I was 12 when the war started. Mm-hmm. So that was my formal education.
Mm-hmm. You have, in the questionnaire, indicated your father was a textile manufacturer.
That's correct.
Could you explain a little more about what he did?
Well, it seems that it was in the family. My two grandfathers were also textile manufacturers. Mm-hmm. I used to go to my father's business, which was on a main street in Lodz. It was on Piotrkowska, which is the main street. And there were a lot of machinery, and they were making materials out of, you know, textile, out of yarns. Mm-hmm. And but that had been in the family. I don't know how far, but I know that my two grandfathers did that too. My uncles did it, not in the same place. It's my father that had this place, and my uncles had other places. So it seems to be like in the family that was going from. My father happened to be the oldest son of one of the grandfathers, so I know he took over that business. And but there were my uncles from my mother's side that were also manufacturers of textile. It was the only thing I do remember the number of a telephone that my father had in the business. I do not remember. We'd had no telephone at home. That was not the thing in 38, 39. But I do remember it's. I can say it in Polish.
Fine, please do.
112-64. For some odd reason, I have a blank. I can translate it, but I remember that number. It's only 5 digits. And that's little things like that. I used to go and visit my father after school with my mother. And I was, by having a brother 8 years old and being the youngest, I was a little spoiled. You know, whatever I wanted, I got. So my sister was the middle one, so we talk about it now, that sometimes, she says, sometimes, even though she was really very beautiful and everybody looked at her, and I was the one that sat always, I was the youngest grandchild on my grandfather's lap, we were very traditional. My grandfather was Orthodox with a beard, but very progressive. He shook hands with women. It's not that he was Orthodox. We had a kosher home, very traditional. All the holidays were always celebrated in a big scale. And it was just I have really wonderful memories if I think back.
Did your mother work?
No, my mother did not work. I don't think that was the thing, unless you were really very, not very poor. Women did not, this is, I'm talking in the 30s in Europe, in a Jewish family, in a middle-class family. I don't remember. My mother smoked, which was very unusual. It was...
When I say work, she was not involved in the business at all?
No, she was not involved in the business at all. My brother started when he finished his gymnasium and his studies, he started to go into the business with my father, which probably eventually would have been his.
Could you describe what your house looked like?
Yes. We lived in an apartment which consisted of, I would say 2 bedrooms and a small little study. There was a living room, and there was indoor bathroom, it was a very nice neighborhood. Not everyone had that. We had a bathroom with a tub. It was not as like we know it nowadays, but it was I shared a room with my sister. My brother had the study was converted. It was a little room. It was converted for his bedroom, and my parents had a bedroom. And we had one room where it was dining room, living room. There were no separate, and a kitchen. And we had I can't call her a maid because she lived ever since I was born. She was with us. She was with us before my sister was born. And when the time came to go to a ghetto, she insisted on going with us, which my mother did not allow. She was a Christian, and my mother would not take her. Why would she want to go through all we knew already that it's going to be troublesome. Why would she want to? So her name was Helka, I remember. She had red hair. She had a big braid coming down. And again, since I was the youngest one, she really pampered me. And I loved her very much, but I didn't go back because I was sick after the war. So I really don't know whatever happened to her.
She lived with you?
She lived with us.
And where did she stay?
She had a bed in the kitchen that she was folding, because this is not that we already had a big apartment consisting of the living room, dining room, a big kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a little, that was considered big.
And how large was the apartment house?
The apartment house was 3 or 4 floors up. It was in a very nice neighborhood. There were parks around us, and it was a very beautiful neighborhood. But mostly, like I said before, there were a lot of the German gymnasium was right around the corner from us. It was Alea Kościuszki, which was a beautiful street. Alea is, it's like a street in the center, and on both sides you have trees, and it was very beautiful. And that's where the German gymnasium was. And consequently, when the Germans came into Poland very, very fast to lodge, very, very fast, we were thrown out very, very fast because it was a good neighborhood, and they took it over immediately. So we were faced immediately with sending us into an area which became a ghetto, a large ghetto, which was horrendous, which were, to describe it, it was slums, but a lot of Jews. It was like the Lower East Side, but bad, worse than whatever you think of the Lower East Side. A lot of people cramming into one room, and the ghetto, of course, I'll talk about it later if you want me to.
I'd like to go back to where you lived and your family. You said that the family celebrated all the holidays together. In your house?
No, it was mostly in my grandparents' house.
And where did they live?
They lived on a, do you want me to name this?
Well, it's fine.
Yeah, well, I had a blank. Andrea Shedem, which was also a very nice street, but like I said, they had this big, they had a much bigger apartment, and they had this big salon. It was called salon. Sometimes you see, you come across it if you're in Europe. It's not a living room, it's a salon. But it was very narrow and very long.
Windows?
So the tables...
Were there windows in the salon?
Oh, yes. It was, at the end of the salon was a balcony, and the balcony was closed in with glass. It was like a, I should ask my husband, the 3 windows where you have...
Bay windows.
Bay windows, thank you. I do get it sometimes.
It's all right.
And that's where the family, not for Friday night. Friday night and on a Shabbat we stayed home, but there were always some uncles and aunts and cousins coming, if not all of them, because it would have been too much, but 1 or 2, and we always celebrated together. And it seems that my parents had a very, very good time with their sisters and brothers. Purim was a very funny holiday. They did all kinds of tricks to each other.
Like what?
Yes, they would dress up, you know, like a masquerade, and I do remember one thing, that my mother once dressed as a nurse, and she was walking around and giving injections to the rest of the family, and there was screams and laughter, and it was fun. We also, as children, were dressed, but we were watching them because they had such a great time with each other.
What language was used at home?
Basically, my parents spoke to us Polish. There was some Yiddish. My grandparents spoke Yiddish and Polish, and basically to the 3 of us, my parents spoke Polish. But of course, we all knew Yiddish. We did.
Did you go to, what kind of school did you go to?
I only went to a neighborhood public school. My sister, however, went already to a private high school, gymnasium. And my brother did to a Hebrew high school.
I see. Did you have any Jewish education?
Of course.
Formal.
There was a tutor coming in, a very nice old man with a long beard, to tutor my sister and me in Hebrew, prayers, and I remember that we were giving him a very hard time. I do remember that. And but there was naturally some of it stuck, yes. Not, I am, you know, I can pray. I'm a little bit behind everybody else, slower, but
Are you able to read Hebrew as a result of that?
Yes, slowly.
Did your brother have a bar mitzvah?
My brother had a bar mitzvah, yes.
Do you remember?
Yes, it was also held in, remember I was very small, 8 years difference. It was held in my grandmother's house.
The ceremony was in your grandmother's house?
No. That was in a there was a, on that street where I told you that they had this German gymnasium, this Alea Kościuszki. They had one of the largest synagogues in Lodz. It was magnificent. Consequently, when the Germans came in, this was the first synagogue into Lodz. That was the first synagogue that they started to burn, but very slowly, slowly. It wasn't just put a match and burn the building. It was a very big building. It was magnificent inside. What they did is burn it for about 4 or 5 weeks. There was just smoke coming out, you know. This was to break our morale, to show us that we're absolutely nothing, that they can do whatever they want to. It wasn't just blown up. It was slowly. It was done psychologically. I guess they broke our morale, they broke our spirit, because this is what they attacked first, was the synagogues, the shuls, the rabbis, the teachers, so that you... a lot of people, I spoke not long ago to junior congregation, and the young children of 11, 12, and 13 asked me, how come you didn't resist? And I had to think, and how do you answer 11, 12-year-old ones? How I didn't resist? I just simply said, how old are you? This was a little, very bright boy. He said, I'm 11 going on 12. I said, that's good. I always wanted people to ask me that question. I was 12. And then I asked him, do you have any guns at home? He says, no, absolutely none. Do your parents have guns? He says, no. He says, well, in that case, think about me being 12, facing Germans with guns right behind my back. Well, I had a choice. I could resist and run. Then they would shoot me. Or I could stand and wait and see what will happen. That was the only choice I had. I could have been killed within a minute, or I could go on and be a witness now. That's the way I answered this child. And that's the way it was. You know, people ask why. There was some resistance, and you know about it in some towns, but somehow in our ghetto, I don't know if you want me to talk about it already.
No, we'll get to it. I'd like to really
well, let's talk
go
about
back to your brother's bar mitzvah.
Yes, my brother's
and
bar
come
mitzvah.
back to
It was nothing like we know bar mitzvahs now. It was much more the traditional, the religious aspect of it. I remember throwing candies at him in the synagogue. You know, when he would, that I remember. And then we came home, and then there was a dinner served for the family and friends. And all the cousins. I had a lot of cousins. And, but there was nothing, there was no dancing, and no, it was more traditional. It was, in the synagogue, it was bar mitzvah, yes, he was.
Were there any ceremonies for you or your sister? Religious ceremonies?
No. There were no bas mitzvahs at that time. No, we did not celebrate bas mitzvahs. And I was only 12 and when the war started. And she was 14, but there was no bas mitzvah. No, not at all.
So basically your formal Jewish education was with a tutor?
Yes, yes.
What about your friends? Who were your friends?
Well, my friends lived around in my neighborhood, and they were mostly Jewish. I did have in the house, I had some German friends, two girls and one boy, which immediately turned against me the minute the Germans walked in. Even though we grew up for 12 years, we played in the backyard, and we shared the same toys and the same, as a 12-year-old, we shared books. Immediately, they turned against us. The following day, it was the most amazing and horrible thing to experience as a child. Why? What? Do
you remember what you did?
No, but I remember later thinking, I wasn't asked if I want to be Jewish before I was born. You know, I wasn't. It wasn't my choice. I was born Jewish. Why do I have to pay such a price for just being born a Jew?
Do you remember your reacting to this young man?
No, I did not. I did not. I wasn't allowed by my parents. Not by my parents, because only by my mother, because the minute the Germans walked in, all the men, which included my father, my uncles, my brother, who was 20 already. And my brother was, in 1939, my brother was 20. And as a young man, handsome, and young people, I don't know why, he talked against the Germans. And and we lived between Germans. So the minute Germans walked in, which was 2 days after they declared the war on Poland, 2 days after, they were right there. The first thing that our neighbors came in to my mother and said, if your son comes, because all men ran away, I don't know for what reason. They thought if they run away, maybe they'll help the Polish army. I really don't know, because it wasn't discussed, but the men went away. So they came in and they said, if your son comes back, he will be hanged, because he talked against Germans. So we had a very rough time, and it cost a lot of money to watch out. We had like a 24-hour, we stood in front of the house watching who's coming back. So slowly the men were coming back, because they couldn't accomplish anything. They were going just to another town, and the other town the men were running too. So my brother was immediately smuggled to Warsaw, where my mother had a brother and a sister-in-law, and I had a cousin, which I knew very well because she was coming for the holidays. And that's where he spent his years. That's where he was killed, in the Warsaw Uprising. The last time I saw my brother was September 1939. He was 20, I was 12. But something occurred about 10 years ago, which I think is very interesting and very emotional. My brother was always going out with girls that were 2-3 years older than himself, which in 1939 they would have been 23, 24. I'm 12, sorry. It's 8 years different. 10 years ago I went to a wedding in the United States of America, in New Jersey, Short Hills. And a lady, a gray-haired lady, quite old, 10 years ago. I'm 65 now, I was 55. And he would have been 63. Now she must have been close to 70. She was gray and she was really looking old. And she came over to me and she said, "Are you Genia Cohn?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You know, I was your brother's girlfriend." Now you have to realize that I only know a 20-year-old. I only remember this good-looking, dark-haired 20-year-old boy. And I see this old lady telling me that she is... I even at this point, I'm getting goosebumps, but I can never forget that. I walked over to my husband, and I started crying. I almost fainted, because it was such an emotional thing. How would this old lady be a friend of my brother? He was so young. He was so... How could that happen? He brought me a drink and set me down, and I cooled off, but it was a horrible experience, because where did this come from? You know, you realize life goes on, but then all of a sudden your past this was the first and only person that I met that she knew my brother from Lodz, because I didn't come, there are only 12 or 14 survivors from Warsaw, from the ghetto. There's absolutely nobody that I can ask if they knew him. And when he died, I know he died in the uprising, so that's all I have.
Have you had any contact with this lady since? With this woman since?
No, that was too, that would be too emotional. I cannot, I'm dealing with everything pretty good. I cope with it very well. As a matter of fact, I'll talk about my sister who had a big problem. coping well, but this was something I didn't know this lady, and maybe she had a date or not with my brother, and if she knew him, there was, what would I possibly have in common with her at this point? So no, I didn't get in touch with her.
I'm just curious about a few more things in the community, that in your home and the community around your home. What kind of Jewish community life was there, or other community life?
Oh, it was a very strong Jewish community. Beside that big synagogue, now we always did not go to this big synagogue. There was a shul, a small shul, which my father went every Friday night and Saturday. My brother did too. Sometimes my brother cheated. He didn't. But and all the holidays, we always went on a Shabbat to visit my. It was, our house was kosher and very traditional, and there were a lot of people, a lot of Jews. I personally, there are a lot of people that came across anti-Semitism. I would be lying if I tell you that someone called me a dirty Jew until 1939. I didn't personally come across any. May I have a tissue?
Sure. Do we have tissues, Michael?
Or if I just have my bag, I'll find a tissue.
I think.
I'm sorry about that, but I should have thought about getting a tissue.
We usually have a box of
Yes,
tissue.
thank you.
Okay.
I was talking about the lady, and I got very...
I understand.
Yes, it was a big Jewish community, and we mostly associated with everyone that we went places. Everything was very Jewish. It was
did you shop in Jewish stores primarily?
Absolutely, kosher butchers.
What kind of foods did your mother serve, or whoever
traditional
cooked?
Jewish food.
Like what?
Are you talking about Friday night? Would be fish and chicken soup, and roasted chicken, boiled chicken. I mean, it was and tzimmes. And I know all this because I keep on cooking it now for my grandchildren. And I watched this Helka, this lady that was with us. And yes, very traditional. You mean on every day?
No, just general. What kind of foods did you eat, other than the traditional foods on
We
Shabbat?
never had any bacon or anything that wasn't kosher in the house. Never. That I remember distinctly. But I don't really remember what exactly I ate. We had cakes, we had bread and butter. We had my favorite sandwich was that I took to school was a little weird, but a lot of European children eat that. Was 2 slices of bread with chocolate, grated chocolate, milk chocolate inside. My favorite. That's a little different, but it's not uncommon in Europe.
No, I know.
And an apple, which my mother would peel and put the skin back on it so it wouldn't get brown. So when I opened my lunchbox, I would just pick up the skin and it would just open up. I do this now also for my grandsons, and they're very happy about that. They think it's funny. But I remember that. But no specific holidays, very traditional. Children, I mean, very traditional Jewish food.
What about newspapers in the house?
Newspapers were Polish and Yiddish.
And Yiddish?
Polish and Yiddish. There was a lot of reading in my house. A lot of books. We were exposed to, since we had this radio, to a lot of music. And it was mostly not heavy classical music, but it was classical music. It was operettas. Which I still remember, and I remember my mother singing, and my father, and a lot of always the radio playing.
How did your father dress? In Western garb or in?
Yes.
Did he have a beard and all of that? So he's very modern.
My grandfather did. Both my grandfathers did, and 1 or 2 of my uncles did. But not my father.
And you said you had no pictures left of from that area.
I have absolutely nothing. I only have memory, and the interesting part about it is that my mother was very sick in a ghetto and looked very bad. She had tuberculosis as a result of a typhus that this was the complication. And when I think about my mother, I do not remember that. I blanked out that part where she looked so horrible. I do remember her the way she looked in 1937, 38, 39. But I have no pictures. We have no family in the United States. And we had only one aunt that left for Palestine in 37. My brother's sister, my father's sister. And she, for some reason, didn't have any pictures because I went to Israel too. So in Auschwitz, I mean, we had some in the ghetto, but in Auschwitz, when you're stripped naked, that's it.
Yeah.
And there's only, no one is left in the family from this big, big family, just my sister and I.
Your aunt had no family?
And the aunt, yes, the aunt in Israel has a family. I have cousins.
Where did your mother come from? Lodge as well?
Yes, Lodge as well. Remember that these were two brothers, my grandfathers, that lived very close together, you know, and very close, just a few blocks away from each other. And I suppose when it must have been like a shidduch or something. I don't know, but they seemed to be happy. They were cousins, first cousins. My mother and father were first cousins.
And how was it treated in the family? As something
you mean before the war?
That you remember?
No, I don't remember anything. I only remember that they were all coins. You know what that is, kahanim.
Yeah, kohanim.
Yeah. And you know that a man, if somebody dies, is not supposed to be in the house where the dead body is. When my grandfather, who was, you noticed, his name was Shlomo Wolf Cohn. He was very well known and big philanthropist in Lodz. And when he died, I noticed that there were no men in the house when he died. They were all standing on the street. And it was very... And then my mother explained it to me. I mean...
When did he die?
I was really little. Maybe I was 4 or 5. I don't remember. I couldn't tell you the year at all. There was a very big funeral, and it went through the main street of the Piotrkowska, main street of Lodz, which was very unusual because they didn't allow Jewish funerals to go through this street.
The Polish government didn't.
Polish government.
So where did they go?
Well, they with this side street. They didn't have to, but this was like an honor. If you, if you were a special citizen, and he was. Though they were brothers, my grandfathers, this one was very outstanding. This was my mother's father, very outstanding philanthropist. So that I remember, because I was with my sister and cousins in a horse and buggy, and we did not go. We just went halfway. They didn't take us to the cemetery because I don't remember if I was 4, 5, 3. I had to be more than 3 because I remember asking why everyone is. Oh, my father, my brother, my uncles, why are they all standing there? But because the family was so intermarried, everybody was a Cohen.
I see. And they did not take the children to the cemetery?
No, I don't know why. Maybe some people did, but I know that the 5 of us were not taking. We went just like halfway. We followed everyone else, and then halfway they turned around. And there was a lady with us, and she took us back home.
Were you part of whatever other events took place after the actual funeral?
Yes, they were sitting Shiva, of course. Of course, I was coming to the house. There were a lot of people sitting Shiva. You know, my mother had, like I said, brothers and sisters, and they were married. And so everybody and all this tremendous family, sure, there were a lot of people. My mother was sitting Shiva, and we were always there. Distances were not like in New York City. And all I had to do is walk for 15 minutes, and I was in my grandmother's house. So,
do you remember other life cycle events that you were permitted to attend or did attend?
I remember attending a wedding, which was very nice.
Can you describe it?
Yes, it was the youngest brother of my mother, and it was again taken in the same place. And everyone was dressed. All the men were dressed in. They were dressed up with top hats, and all the little cousins were dressed, as I remember, in velvet, different colors, blue and burgundy. The girls, and the boys in black little velvet suits. We were small. We were small. I might have been 7, so my sister was 9, and my cousins, we were approximately the same age. I was the youngest. There was a year difference, and most of them were like my sister's age, and a little older.
Was the wedding indoors or outdoors?
Indoors in this salon, and which could, there was a lot of people. It was such a long room and so many people. I remember that, and there was the youngest brother. His name was Jakub, of my mother, and he then had a child, which was younger than all of us, and that was, I don't know whatever happened to any of them. And this was, a lot of them were in lodge. But when we get into the ghetto part, I'll tell you how we communicated.
Were there any other life cycle things like a brit or
like what?
You've described a funeral and a wedding.
Yes.
A birth. Do you remember any?
No.
Baby namings, births?
No, I don't remember that. I do remember one of my aunts being operated, gallstone operation, if that means anything, and which I inherited, and she was brought. She was also the oldest sister of my mother, and she was brought to my grandmother to recuperate. And I remember a woman in white walking around, so there must have been a nurse. I really don't, because I was more into what children do.
Tell me, your teachers,
Yes.
were they, any of them Jewish?
Yes.
In the public school?
Yes. But I don't, like I said, I really can't, I would be lying if I tell you that I came across. Maybe I was sheltered, because most of the people say that maybe the neighborhood we lived in. I know that the minute the Germans walked in, there was no end to what they carried on. But before, I did not. My father and mother talked about it. My brother came across it. He was older, and he was called, he had some friends, and if they were angry, Christian friends, they would call him Żyd. You know, you Jew, you Jew. I remember the conversation. It is not something that stood out in my sister claims, she was older now too, she was 2 years older, that she came across some of it, anti-Semitism in Poland. I know there was an awful lot. Before the Germans came in, the Polish people were were and are very anti-Semitic. They are taught, the minute they go to school, they are taught that we killed Christ, we killed children to have the blood to make matzahs for Passover. They're very serious. Now, Poland
This is in the public schools?
This is,
or in the church?
No, that was parochial schools. But they're taught at home, the same thing. They are very anti-Semitic because they are very strict Catholics. And even, I think, the very intelligent ones believe whatever the priest says. I hope to God that it changed, but from all what I hear, that people that go back, it did not. They're still anti-Semites.
Okay, tell me, where were you when the war broke out? When you heard about the war?
since this was September 1st, the war broke out between Poland and Germany. Excuse me. And this was still vacation time from school, because we started school almost like here, September 7th or 8th, I don't remember exactly. My sister, my mother, and me, we were in a pensionat, which means like a hotel. It wasn't. It was not. They had some mountains, but not like the Catskills. We were away for the summer.
Do you remember where?
Yes, if you can spell it, Włodzimierzów.
No, I don't have to spell it. You can say it.
Włodzimierzów.
Yeah.
This was.
And how far was it?
How far was it? Wasn't far. It was maybe 2 hours. But remember that we had to take a little train, and then we had the horse, and there were no cars. So it took longer. Probably with a car it would take, I don't know, 30 minutes. But this way it was like a 2.5, 3 hour trip. I think approximately. You know, I would have to check with my husband, who was older and knows the geography better. But that's where we stayed, not every year, but for the last 1937, 38, and 39. That's where we went for the summer. My brother and my father used to come in for the weekend. They came Friday and left Sunday.
This was a Jewish pension?
Absolutely Jewish, absolutely kosher, absolutely Jewish. This whole little place was like the Catskills, was all mostly Jewish. Absolutely. Yes. I don't think, yes, Sunday morning they would go back, not stay Sunday, because there were no big weekends like that. I think that my father had to be back Sunday afternoon or something. This is where I was with my mother and my father when with my mother and my sister, when we found out that the war was declared. At that point, everybody panicked. And everybody wanted to go home. And the closest town to this Włodzimierzów was Piotrków, a little town. And we tried to get, everyone, not only we tried to get to this little town, and from which we walked. And we walked for hours, that I remember, because there were so many people walking. Maybe not hours, but at least 2 hours. We walked, and we tried to get a train or anything to get back to Lodz 2, which my mother was successful in getting. There was something that I forgot to mention, that since 1938, now I'm sure you're familiar with the name Gdańsk, where Lech Walesa came from, where the strike was.
Yes.
I blanked out. What's the German word for it? Gdańsk. All right. It's that port state.
I've always called it Gdansk, but I may be pronouncing it incorrectly.
Gdańsk.
I don't know how would they.
We had living with us a little Jewish girl, exactly my sister's age, from Germany. 1938, her father and mother tried to run away because they already knew what was going on. They wound up in what do you call it, Gdańsk. They wound up there, and then some of the Jewish children were brought to Lodz, and some people that could afford it took these children in. So my mother picked a girl that was my sister's age, and she now shared with us this room. She did not she left before we went on this vacation. She left with her father. He came and looked for her. She was with us 38 till 39, about 7 months. And then her father came, and they emigrated to the United States. And I have completely forgotten the last name. My sister didn't remember the last name. Consequently, when we came to the States, I couldn't look them up. I just knew a first name. Now, how do you look for somebody that you know a first name? There was absolutely nobody that I could connect with these two. in this, and she lived with us, and my parents sent her to school for 7 months. I'm sorry, but
No,
I want,
that's fine, but
I wanted you to know that because they already had the bad time in 38. So now back to how we got to this town, and for some, I don't know how, I really don't know how, we were able to come into Lodz. My father was, needless to say, was very panicky, and my brother, so we came in, and as soon as we came in, they were saying the Germans are coming, so all the men went.
Where did they go?
They didn't know either. They were just going to see, maybe they can help fight the army, the Polish army. I have no idea. The reason why did they go? Because the Germans were coming. September 3rd, the Germans were in our town. 2 days.
Do you remember that day?
Yes, I remember that day because I was very foolish. I was 12, and when they said the war is on, that the Germans are here, I said to myself, good, I won't have to go to school now. I was only 12, and I was very foolish, and I never regretted anything more in my life than that thought, because that was the end of my formal education.
Where were you when you saw your first German soldier?
I was home because they immediately, first of all, as soon as we heard that they're in town, my mother's neighbors' friends, quote unquote, walked in and said to my mother first about my brother, that they're going to hang him. And then they proceeded to empty the house of crystals, silver, anything that was valuable.
And your mother had no recourse?
No, my mother had no recourse. There was already a soldier, a German soldier there.
I see.
What could she possibly do? She was with two a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old in a state of shock. What do you do?
Was any of your own stuff taken?
No, they mostly concentrated on things. They pulled drugs. That my parents had. That was the first step, and that was the first shock. I can't describe it, but I looked at my mother, and she was absolutely in a state of shock, because these were her friends. Not very close. She had mostly Jewish friends, but they were neighbors, next door neighbors. And they used to come in and have coffee, always tea, rather, with my mother. And they were always, how could this happen, that people change within a half a day? It was so fast that it was incredible. And then it started with my brother. So we took turns because my father didn't come back yet. My sister, my mother, and me, we stood in front of the house watching for the man and asking, did you see, if there was someone that we knew, did you see our brother and father? If anybody knows where our brother is, tell him not to come home, because they're going to hang him. And
did he come home?
No, we were able to, no, he never walked into the house, but we were able to get in touch with somebody, and my mother had jewelry which she gave to some, already, overnight there were smugglers, people that were smuggling, that somebody needed, you had to have a little connection, and you had to have something to give, money. So I remember that my mother, I don't know what she gave, I have no idea. But she did give somebody some jewelry, and they made sure, and we knew positively, because we heard from him once only, that he is in Warsaw with our uncle, aunt, and a cousin. But that was it. That was the last thing. I know that my father tried to get out, which was, we didn't know what to expect, you don't, I mean, this happened so fast. when you go away for the summer, my mother had fur coat. So when we sent, my father sent for the summer to storage. So he asked our super, who wasn't Jewish, to go, and it was this I remember distinctly, a piece of paper like you holding, with a description and the receipt for the fur coat. He gave it to our super, would he please go and take it out of storage. And he went. My father paid him. He went. When he came back, there was a big Jude, Jew, with red pencil on that paper.
Mm-hmm. With the coat or without the coat?
No coat. No coat, of course, no coat. That's about it.
Okay.
That's
yeah. And that started.
Then it started.
Okay. All right, we're going to break for a few minutes while the tape gets changed. It is October 22nd, 1992, Museum of Jewish Heritage Video History Project. My name is Naomi Rappaport. This is tape number 2, and I am speaking with Genia Litwok. Genia, we left you just at the beginning of the war when your brother fled to Warsaw and your father and all the men in the community had left Lodz and the Germans had entered. Can we pick it up from there?
Sure. Eventually, it took a few days, and all the men came back because there was nowhere to go. Germans took over most of Poland very, very fast. And there were rumors immediately that they will take a part of Lodz and create a ghetto for the Jews. Because immediately when they came into the town, like in my father's business, someone came in and said, as of now, this business belongs to me, and you have to show me how to run it.
Do you know who that person was?
No, I have absolutely no idea.
Did your father know who it was?
No, it was just one of the, maybe he worked with, you know, it was so fast. Mm-hmm. I don't know. My father didn't know it either. Mm-hmm. But my father had to show him how to run this business. He obviously knew something about textiles because this is what they did. When they took over a business, they sent someone that had an idea, but he probably was like, you know, he just had an idea about the business.
When you say they sent someone, you mean the Germans or the Poles?
Immediately took over. The Poles had absolutely no power. The minute they walked into Lodz, there was no power. Nobody, no Polish government existed. It was German. And now like the rumor started that they will, we just didn't know where. It didn't take very long. Since we did live in a very nice neighborhood, we were one of the first ones to be sent to the part that will become the ghetto, which was very crowded and very, they gave us one room.
How large?
In some, I beg your pardon.
How large was the room?
Not very large. One room, 2 beds for 4 people. No bathroom, no kitchen, I mean a little, I think a burner for 2 pots or something. I don't remember exactly. But this was what happened. Within no time, we were sent to, we were one of the first ones to be evacuated.
Did you have a choice of which rooms you could take?
No.
They just assigned you?
They just took you, and they said, this is where you're going to be. There was no choice. There was no words. All you knew is, all you saw was guns.
What'd you take with you?
That was something that I remember too. I even talked to my sister about it not long ago, that before we left, the German that came in, the soldiers that came in to take over our apartment, said to my father, you have 15 minutes to take what you want to get out. 15 minutes of a lifetime. So my father looked, he grabbed my mother and the 2 of us. My brother was gone already. He was already in Warsaw, and this I remember distinctly. He grabbed an alarm clock. For what reason? And he just stood there. He was frozen. He did not know. What do you possibly take? What is it that you take? He took an alarm clock, and my mother even said to him, "That's all you're going to take?" I think that eventually we all got some clothes, but no furniture and no. What could you take? I mean,
What about dishes, pots, pans, anything of that sort?
who? Me? My sister? We're going to
No,
carry.
I meant your
This was not something that they let you put in boxes, and whatever you can carry.
No suitcase?
I don't think so. They did eventually. After a week, they let my father go back. This man that took over his business pulled some strings and let my father go back to the apartment and bring some things like pots and some things that were. I remember he put it on he had to like a wheelbarrow that my father had to go through town and push full of things that for the house, but nothing. Clothes, we just took a bunch of clothes. My sister took, I took, my mother gave it to us, my mother and my father, and this alarm clock. But then, like I said, he went back and he took some things, but no furniture and nothing of value, because already the valuable things were taken by the neighbors. If you're talking about jewelry, my brother, when he went to Warsaw, took all the jewelry with him. And the jewelry still must be existing, because my uncle owned a house in Warsaw, which I, through lawyers not long ago, tried to get ownership of, sell it. But the house is standing. It's an apartment house. It only has, I think, 2 floors. And all the jewelry was buried in one of the walls, but I have no idea where. You can't just break up a house, and so that's where the jewelry is, the family jewelry. My aunts and everybody else's is in a wall in a house in Warsaw. But that's all that we had. No valuables, whatever we could take. But immediately coming to my mother, we were the following day they called us all to a truck came in with German soldiers, and they set everybody to into the yard. So everybody came down, and they started in the beginning. This is the very beginning. So they were still gentle, but they didn't want any children yet. So they said, well, keep them quiet for a while. But I was 12, so they said, you have to start working. This is where my birth certificate, and I made myself 1 year older under the pressure of my parents to be closer to my sister. She was born 1925. I was born 1927. And they said, if you're going to say 1926, maybe you will be working together. And that's how it started, that and after the war, since I was 17, I wanted to be 18, I left it. And now all my papers have me as a year older, 1926, but I'm not. I was born 1927.
Did you take food with you? Any food with you from your house?
No. They started giving us rations right away they brought more people, not only from Lodz into the ghetto. They brought from Germany, they brought eventually. This is not the very beginning. When they closed the ghetto, which they closed I'm sorry, I do not know the date, but it took only a few months, where they put the barbed wire, the electric barbed wire, and they closed it up. And it became it was run like a little government. We had our own money with a picture of the Judenälteste, who was Rumkowski. And and they created apartments, factories, but everything that was done in the factories went to the Germans. Young girls like me were taken to a factory which was called Handstrickerei, if you understand German. That is knitting, crocheting, doing things that the little 12, there was no one younger than me. 12 and up to 14, 15, 16. And what we did in the beginning, we were making tablecloth on a round needle. knitting.
Yeah.
Did you ever come? Did you
Yes,
ever see
I've
those?
seen it, yes.
Yes, and they look like lace. They taught us, and we were doing this for German women. You know, they were taking it out. When the Germans started a war with the Russians, they switched us to crocheting hats and mittens for the Russian front, for the Germans. So that was a different phase of the, but that was later, because it was 1942, I think.
Who worked
Who worked in this?
in your family? Who was sent?
Everybody had to work. There was no one that could be in a ghetto, because eventually they took all the children and all the old people. That happened very fast. They would make, again, they would come to the yard, and first of all you had to be at 5 o'clock was curfew. 6 o'clock curfew. You could not go out. They would come into the yard and say, everybody down. And then they would take, every day they would take little children, and 4-year-old ones, and 5-year-old ones, old people, sick people, that they were doing constantly. This was a process that was constant. In 1943, 44, there were no more children, no more old people, no more sick people. We all worked. My father worked in a lumber or something factory, carrying lumber. My sister was, who is very talented. Whatever she does well until today. She was making rugs out of little pieces of scraps. Rugs for the floor. My mother worked in a factory where they were making dresses, uniforms for women, for nurses. And in 1942, my sister got sick. There was a tremendous amount of typhoid all around. And my sister got sick. My mother took care of her between going to work and taking care of and she got sick. My sister got well, but my mother had complications, and the complication developed into tuberculosis. Now we were faced, and they weren't allowed to know that. There were some Jewish doctors that we kept it quiet, you know, between us. Otherwise, they immediately took you away. And they would help a little bit, as much as they could. The communication between people was, after the curfew, one block, what we did is we built like a tunnel from one house to the end of the block. We only communicated with the people within the block. But during the day we had some Jewish doctors, Jewish nurses, and luckily my sister, who was a teenager, I'm talking about 42, she's already 1925, 42, so she, what is she? 3 years after, she is 17. She has a boyfriend. And her boyfriend was, before the war, a medical student in Paris. But he was in a ghetto. He came from Paris and to be with his parents before they closed the ghetto. He became like a nurse, male nurse. And he helped us a little bit with getting us medication for my mother. Now, she could not go to work, but if you had some, it was called protectia. Did you ever come across that word? It's, in a good American slang, it's pull. If you had some pull,
It's protected.
you could get work into the house. You didn't have to go to the factory. There weren't too many people that got it, but luckily we got this for our mother. She could not do it, so when I came back from my work, which was 12 hours, and my sister came back we did the work for our mother, and we were able to keep her alive for 2 years. When they had this, when they would come and ask everyone to come down to the yard, and she was pale, and she didn't look, we used to pinch her cheeks and make her, you know, and comb her hair and whatever we had to make her look pretty. She was a beautiful woman, but at that point she really didn't. But we pinched her, we put little, I don't know, pencil we didn't have any makeup, and we were able to keep her alive that way for 2 years. But she did die in 1944, just before they closed the ghetto. She did die of tuberculosis. Now, back to my work. I worked 12 hours a day. It was pure hell. I don't know if you're aware that there were different ghettos, but Lodz was, from what I found out after the war, must have been the worst. All we got is 2 slices of bread and some watery soup. It was just like a camp. It was incredible. The only difference was that you were still with your family. It was not a concentration camp, because I still saw my father and still saw my mother and my sister and families, but there were no more children in there. Eventually, no more children, no more sick people. And after the curfew, you had to be in, and I do remember once being caught. If you were caught after curfew walking the street, you were simply thrown on a big truck and sent away. We didn't know, but then we found out it was either Auschwitz, any of the concentration camps, and killed. I don't know, I don't recall how it happened that I happened to be on the street and they caught me. And I was on a truck already, and this boyfriend of my sister's, he had a Red Cross, he could go around. Somehow she was able to get in touch with him, because we were in this, his parents lived in the same block. And he came in and he got me off that truck. And now he said to me, "You're on your own, get home." Now, the empty streets, and there are soldiers on the street. And that was an experience that I shall never forget. I tried to walk right next to the wall, and I don't know how. If you believe in, it happened to me twice during the war. If you believe in the word "besheert," which means it's supposed to be, I guess I was supposed to live, because I did make it home, and this was the first time that I saw my father cry like a baby.
How did you make it home?
I beg your pardon?
How did you make it home?
I don't know. I made it home. It wasn't that far, I guess, and I walked so close to the buildings. I don't know, it was dark, they didn't see me. I guess I was supposed to live. Because if anyone would have seen me, all they did is, boom, you're gone. I mean, because he could take me off the truck, but he could not take me home, because then they would have shot him too. What is he doing with me? I'm not sick, So that was, I don't know, it was a miracle. And when I got home, I still remember my father being so emotional.
Was your mother alive still?
Yes, yes, she was, but she was already very sick. Sure. My mother died in May, and they closed the ghetto in August. So the last day of August, and we were sent to Auschwitz the 28th of August, so 2 days before they closed up the ghetto. Rumkowski came a day after me to Auschwitz. Of course, they killed him there. You must have read about that.
What happened after your mother died? Well, how were you permitted funeral rites or anything of that sort?
Very hush-hush. There is this, the man came that washed the body. There is a name for them.
Chevra Kadisha.
That's exactly right. They came in, and we expected it, because she was deteriorating, and we knew that she's going to die. Nobody came. There was no way. There was just our father, my sister, and me. And they took her away, and then they told us to go to a cemetery where there were thousands of graves. I have no idea where my mother's in one of those graves, but I have absolutely no idea. No idea, because they were killing so many people, and they weren't even bothering with graves. They would just throw, I don't know how many people into one hole.
Did you work a 7-day week?
You know, I don't know if this is, I guess I blanked it out. I don't remember. You'll have to forgive me, but I don't remember. I know 6 positive.
If you were not feeling well, or if for one reason or another, was there any way that you could not go in one day?
No. Unless there was a possibility that somehow you had some kind of a pull, you would cover it up. Somebody would cover it up for you.
Did you have relationships or friends amongst your age or about your age?
Yes, like I told, I had my sister had this boyfriend who used to come in and help us out with getting a little bit of medication for my mother. And one more thing, my sister herself is very talented. She's very talented. Whatever she does right. And she made a rug with a face in it. And I remember that she was telling us that the German came in and he asked, who made this rug? And whoever was in charge said, well, this girl. So he said to her, I want you to teach the others how to do it. Now I have to tell you, I'm going to emphasize this, is my father and my sister and me, we always try to stay in a corner, not to have any position. A lot of people, for an extra piece of bread, did become foremen. There were this is ghetto, so there's no Studenälteste. There's only one Judenälteste, and there is a Judenrat, which is governs the ghetto. My father never participated in any of this. And my sister tried not to, when they said to her, you're going to instruct, she tried to avoid it because she thought now she'll have to deal with the Germans. She was extremely beautiful, really very beautiful woman, beautiful teenager. So she tried to stay away from them. But she could not, because she was an instructor for a very short time and showed him how to make another face or something, they gave her an extra piece of bread, which helped my mother. We gave it to our mother. I had my relationship, I had no relationship. I remember I had to run home and do the work that my mother didn't do. Keep her alive. To deliver it. Every 2 days we had to deliver her work. So it was my sister and me. No, I had absolutely not. I remember my mother saying something which is very funny, interesting, but I do remember it. My brother, if you recall, was 8 years older than me. She had a son when she was 18. Then her second child was a daughter. And she was very progressive for that time. She didn't want any more children. Well, 2 years later, I came along. And when I was doing her work in the ghetto, and when we were sitting, she was telling us, she said, now what would I do now if I would have had an abortion? If I would have not have you to do the work, and and we were very, very close.
Were there indications of abortion or any kind of sexual relationship between people in the ghetto at all? Did people get married in the ghetto?
Yes.
How did they do that?
How did they do it? I don't know. I have never seen one. I know that people got married. They probably had a rabbi who said, you're married. There was no food. There was no dance. There was, like with him that black that I told you. We used to get together. This is how I really learned about books. There were some teachers in different buildings, and they took it upon themselves in the evening to read to us what they remembered, or if they had any books, literature. And because we were, 6 grades isn't very much education. And they talked about literature, and they tried to teach us a little math. They did this all on their own, because there was no official school. I'm talking about ghetto, Lodge ghetto.
Yes.
I don't know what happened in other ghettos. We had no school, but within that block, there were people that were singing, there were people that were dancing, there were people that were teaching, there were people, so they tried to keep, you know, to keep us going. My father was the optimist of this group, and people used to listen to him, and he would always say, yes, this is not going to take long, we'll be all right. And after a while, they stopped coming because he was just making up stories.
Did you have contact with the outside world at all? Did you have a radio, newspapers, any access to anything?
No.
Did you know what was going on in the world?
No, because remember, we had the barbed wire. No, we had a newspaper, but it was a ghetto newspaper, which told you who died and who has a position and who works here and who worked. I mean, local, whatever happened in the ghetto. There were all kinds of Jews at that time in the ghetto, from Hungary, from Germany, from Czechoslovakia. They used to bring in, there were hundreds of thousands of Jews.
But as people came in from the outside,
They took out.
Were they able to share with you some of what was going on?
Well, they said it was bad, but they also did not, they stopped coming, I think, in 42. Or maybe 41. I don't really remember. You know, I was so involved with just going to work and just coming back and being anxious to take care of the things for my mother so we can keep her alive, that I don't remember that much.
Anyone have a radio?
Maybe I blanked it out.
Did anybody have a radio?
Not that I
Illegally,
know of.
obviously.
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of, no. I don't think so. If anything was coming in, I don't know. I really don't know. I wasn't that well informed about things coming into the ghetto. There were some people that would come in, Germans. You know, they would come in and out. And maybe there was a good one.
You were in the ghetto for 5 years?
From the first minute to 2 days before they liquidated it.
How did that happen?
Well,
I mean, how was it liquidated? Do you remember that?
Well, no, they were just starting to take people out and send them to concentration camps. It started it always was going on. You know, they constantly had to reduce.
Were you aware of it? That where these people were going?
No. They said they were going to labor camps, where they're going to work. No, I did not know about Auschwitz.
But you, your sister, and your father remained together?
Yes.
Right till the closing till you were moved out of there?
In Auschwitz, they separated us.
I see. Do you remember how that did?
Well, I can remember August 28th when it was our turn again. The reason, because of this boyfriend, the reason we stayed so long was because they used to come in every day and take a whole house, you know, apartment house, you going. And we stayed longer is because he had some protectors, so he kept us. His parents at that point moved in together with us into that one room. So we were 5.
I see.
And he was coming and going. And yes, finally, this was like a day before Rumkowski was going to go. So they came in and took us into cattle cars, and it was terrible. It was so horrendous.
Did you know where you were going?
No. What they did is they told us, stay with your family. They had microphones. Stay with your family and take your things because you're just going to a labor camp. How would I know where we're going? There's no one to inform us.
Were there rumors?
Maybe they were. I wasn't aware of it. Neither was my sister. And I don't think my father, if he was, he didn't share it with us. Maybe my father was.
How old was your father at that point?
My father was 44 and 44. Now he was born 19. He was young. My mother died. She was 42. She was 2 years younger than my father. There's something that happened in the ghetto that I think I ought to mention, if we have the time.
We have time.
Okay. My father, because he was a middle class, well-to-do Jew, they had in the ghetto, they had what they called Kriminalpolizei. Criminal Polizei, criminal police, if you want to.
Yeah.
And they called themselves Kripo, just the first two, KRPO, Kripo. Now what they did is they called Jews in that they knew that were well off before the war. They were informed by other Jews, unfortunately, who had money and who didn't. And they would call in the man, and by beating him, try to get out where he put his money, where he has his jewelry, whatever you have still, to give it to them. My father was called. He was called, unfortunately, in 44 he was a healthy man. And the beginning of 44. And he was held for 19 days. When he came back, his body was almost charcoal gray from beatings, because what they did is they tortured. Every day they tortured you, and they said, he did not, there was no money to give it to them. Even if we had, you could not, because people were talking about this cripple, criminal police. If you give them something, then they insist you have more. So there was a never-ending cycle. What they were telling him every night is, after the beating, but when he came in, he said that I forgot the word, what you beat with, like a horse, a whip. The whip. You don't beat a horse, but you have a whip. The whip was brought, but as the days go on, it was thinner and thinner. When his body was so painful, it was like almost like a thread. That's how that was their way of torturing him. And also at night they would also tell him, if you're not going to tell us, we're going to bring your wife. We have your wife. Your daughter is in the other room, and one daughter is in the other room. So you better tell us. My father didn't talk because he was a broken man. He was absolutely, from that tremendous optimist, he became a broken man. The man that came back from that 19 days was not the same man. This wasn't the same father that we had. And they didn't come for us. They were just threatening him. And he told us later that if they're going to kill him, they're going to kill him. We didn't have, everything was in either Warsaw or they took everything away. So this was the episode that I thought, and when my father went to Auschwitz and they took one look at his body, I don't know what happened because they separated men from women, but all they had to do is look at his body, which was, this was beginning of 44, and we went in August 28. His body was still black.
Yeah.
He was still, even though we tried, all we had was cold compresses. We couldn't put anything on.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the first thing they did was take him to a crematorium. He was a healthy man, 44 years old.
And you and your sister got to Auschwitz together.
Okay, now we went to Auschwitz together. We were in these terrible, and we had some belongings, because the first scene that I saw in Auschwitz was the orchestra playing that you must have heard about. We had an orchestra sitting up for us. There were women playing, and I remember the song. It was Beer Barrel Polka. Every time I hear that song, it really turns my stomach, but I remember that song. And there was big microphones, soldiers walking with microphones saying, hold on to your family, hold on to your family, hold on to your belongings. So they didn't want panic, for the first minute. So you got off that horrible train where people died and fainted, and there was no food in these cars until we got to, they opened these doors, so they didn't want everybody to, so they said, hold on to, so we did, thinking. But then we looked around and we saw the barbed wire, we saw the striped uniforms, and we saw men jumping like frogs, and one soldier going in front of them, jump, 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 and these were Jewish, because there were all nationalities there. But the worst torture was for Jewish men. They made them jump like frogs. I realized this later, but But this was the scene when they opened the door and the orchestra played. And within 20 minutes, 15 minutes, they separated men from women. And they said, drop everything. The things that you were holding. You still were dressed. Drop everything. So we dropped everything, and within no time they took. I remember my father.
If you want to stop for a minute, we can. Want to cut for a minute?
Cut tape.
Okay.
Okay, I remember when they took him away, he was calling our names.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hear it,
Yeah.
even now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, now we are just women on the left. Now they proceeded to separate girls from women, which means teenagers from 30-year-old ones. Now, I told you that my sister's boyfriend's mother lived with us now, and the father went with my father. Now, she was holding on to me, and she was between me and my sister. And at one point, you know, when they were separating mothers from daughters, there was a commotion and screams. So rather than face that, the Germans would take their mother and daughter to the other side. We didn't know which side is good, which side, but separated. And I don't know how it happened, but this German looked at me and he pushed me together with his mother, who was probably 41. She wasn't an old woman, but he thought it was my mother. So now there's the second miracle. One was how I got home, and my sister, within, it must have taken a split of a second, she pulled me and I was on her side. That was the two. I would have gone to the oven because later on we found out that we went to the good showers and they all went to be killed. So it was, I don't know if he looked away, the Germans he had to look away, he wouldn't allow it. And she was sane enough to grab me. I just made one step in the direction with this lady when she grabbed me. So that was the second miracle that I think that I was just supposed to live. Now we are separated. Now we are all young people. This is ages between 16 to, I would say the oldest one would be 24, 25. Now they tell us, they take us on a march. And as we are marching, we see that the grass is covered with diamonds and rings and watches. And we realize the people are going this way. And instead of handing it to the Germans, whatever they had, they're throwing it down. So we are walking on an inch full of jewelry, and we're just walking on the, you know, whatever they had valuable. I guess they just didn't want to hand it to them, so they just throw it off. Because they said that we will be stripped, Now we're coming to the place where they're going to give us a shower. And they told us to undress everything naked, and one woman came in, I don't know what nationality, and she shaved us. Shaved hair, any place you had hair, it was gone. Okay, and now we did get a shower, but we did not get the shower with a gas. We got a real shower. The water smelled with some kind of, they were afraid, you know, that if we have lice, which we did, it was a good thing they shaved us, because we had lice, I mean, from the ghetto, from the, and they were, from these shower heads, something was coming in like a medicine, anyway.
Disinfectant, probably.
Whatever it was, and now they chased us out. We were like 2,000 young women. They chased us out into the fields, and they said we have to wait for a doctor to examine us. Okay, now so we're sitting naked. This is August 28th, 29th. We're sitting naked all day. I mean, the rest of the day, all night, and it's chilly. We're naked. At 12 o'clock sharp, I don't know how we knew it was 12 o'clock, But all of a sudden we heard this most horrible split of a second scream. Thousands of voices. Quiet. But it's just like a shrill, but within a second. I guess this is when they were doing when the people realized that they were being killed. I don't know. It took just seconds, but we all, and then the smell of the chimneys. We are outside waiting for this doctor. We don't know why, what. And we're sitting and just holding each other, back to back, because it was very cold. We sat like this 48 hours, 2 days.
Were you with your sister?
Yes, I was next to my sister. I have to tell you that when they shaved everybody, I emphasized how beautiful she was. I turned around and I couldn't find her. Because everyone looked exactly the same. I just looked for her eyes. Everyone looked the same. You're naked, you shaved, just a little taller, a little shorter, but the faces, frightened faces, and looked all the same. There was no beauty and no ugliness. Everyone was the same. Okay, so now we're sitting a long, long time, and there's no doctor. 2 days, we sat 48 hours. And then the following day...
Did they feed you?
No.
No
Nothing,
food?
not
No
even
water?
a drop of water. Not a drop of water. Some of the girls fainted, but not even a drop of water. So now there's a commotion, it's daytime, and the doctor is coming. And the doctor is Dr. Mengele. There's a whole entourage. I didn't know who he was, no one knew who he was, but he must have been important because the entourage was so big. And all he did is, at random, he would walk over to a girl with his boot, his knee. He would kick your stomach, and with his fingers, he would pinch your nipples. Now, what happened is, we came from a ghetto, there were men, and maybe somebody was pregnant. You immediately miscarriage, because the way his boot went into your stomach, and I just so happened that I was one of the lucky ones to be personally pinched and kicked by Mengele. He had random. He didn't do it. He did not do it to everyone, but he did. So there was no one pregnant, but and he didn't do it many. I mean, this was the examination.
Yeah, that was the examination.
That was the examination. He just did it random. I don't know how many, because you don't pay. You're so frightened. You don't pay attention. But the whole thing took 10, 15 minutes. 2,000 girls. All right, now they're taking us to the barracks, and they're giving us. If you were tall, you got a short dress. If you were short, you got a long dress. And for our feet, they gave us the wooden shoes. And that was the extent. No bras, no panties, no nothing. Now, some girls had big breasts because they were 20-some, heavier, bigger. I remember 1 or 2 girls pulling off a piece of her dress and making like a, like a scarf, like a zigzag, to hold up the breasts because they were so heavy that they could not walk, and they made us walk and walk and walk. So one tall girl, and she wore this short dress, and she pulled off a little piece. Somebody helped her. We helped each other. How do you pull it off? We have no a little stick. This is how we managed. Now we're in the barracks, and they made us lay down. Everybody lay down in those barracks, so we are like sardines. Actually like sardines. It was incredible. It was. I wasn't long in Auschwitz, as you see from it, but it was the most. I don't think, many times I talk to people and they say, "How could it be possible?" I don't blame them for not believing it, because many times I say to myself, "My God, was I really there? Did really this happen?" It seems so incredible. You can't comprehend it.
You were there about a week.
I beg your pardon?
You were there a week?
Yes, not quite. 6 days, I think, 6 days. But it was torture. And then they gave us tea, a tea that very much reminded us of medication. After we drank that tea, every one of these girls, after the one that was supposed to, it stopped our periods. It was medication. It was not the tea. It was some kind of thing that stopped our periods, which was a blessing in disguise because we had nothing to take care of ourselves if we got our periods. So it was okay. And also later on we found out that the tea had remember, you're dealing with girls that are between 16, 17 to 24, 26. There is a sex drive. This has killed everything. That tea, and that you had to drink. It was absolutely. Now there were no men. The only men we saw is when they took us out to an appeal. We saw some men in striped. They were with a barbed wire. They were separated. So we didn't. There were no men.
Yeah.
But this helped us. No period for the rest until after the war. It took a few months after the war, and we all got.
Do you know what it was?
I have no idea. I know it tasted like medication, and you had to drink. You had to drink it twice a day, and they continue giving it to us when they send us out. The tea, which was fine because you could not have possibly a period. I wore this dress. We wore this dress 9 months. This one dress. They just then in labor camp, they sent us out to Freiburg, you see on my...
Yes, I see in September 6th.
And then they gave us a pair of panties and a blanket because it was already getting cold and they were sending us to a factory. We came into Freiburg, this 2,000 girls. They selected one to be our Judenälteste. She volunteered. She said she speaks. Again, my sister was hiding. She spoke German, and she spoke even English a little bit, but she was hiding. The ones that didn't want to were hiding. This girl volunteered. She was a little older, volunteered and became our Judenälteste.
What does that mean?
Her name was Mary.
But what does that job mean?
She became, she was the closest, the highest ranking woman next to the Germans, of the Jewish women when we went, when they sent us out. And then they did.
How did they do that? How did they arrange
They
sending
said,
you out?
who is a teacher? Who speaks German? So you had a choice. You knew that they were going to do something, make you something.
They did this in Auschwitz, or
They did this when we arrived in
How
Freiburg.
did you get from Auschwitz to Freiburg?
Which we just got in those cattle wagons, trains.
How far is it?
Auschwitz is Poland, and this is Germany. I think it took maybe I don't know how many hours. I really cannot recollect.
Were you with your sister?
Yes. I'm
All
now
the time.
with my sister.
All the time.
All the time. All the time. And they bring us to Freiburg and they make an appeal. So everybody stands, 5 in a row, and they say, who speaks German? So if you were willing to do something with... So this girl came out, she said, I spoke to her. So she became our Judenälteste. You know what that is. And then they gave us rooms, 20, 30 to a room, and they again came in and they said, who speaks German here? So somebody volunteered. So she became the Stubenälteste, the room eldest. So she was in charge of that room, and she was the one that gave us food. Now, when we came into Freiburg, they located us on the top floor. Freiburg is a very small town. The biggest town next to it is 30 kilometers, and it's a town that everybody knows. It's Dresden, where they make china, and it was terribly bombed during the war. It was flattened.
Yes.
It was burning. It was that town was flattened. So this is where Freiburg is a little small town. Now they took us to a very big building. We did not know what that building was. Many stores. many stories up, and we were located on the top floor. Later, the following day, we realized it was a plane factory. They were making planes. Half of us was working in that plane factory, and half of us went to a factory in town. They were making parts for planes. So now my sister and I were the ones sent to the factory outside. And that blanket, they gave us string. So you put the blanket, because it was cold, it was fall, and a string around your neck, and that's how we walked. Now you have to visualize, the Germans say that they didn't know anything. You have to visualize there was at least 1,000 young women walking on the street, 5 in a row, shaved heads, with a blanket around, with wooden shoes, and they're hanging out of the windows, the whole town, because we are going cross town, walking. Wouldn't you ask, who are those? And we have a big KL, Kassettlager, in the back of that blanket. Wouldn't someone ask, who are those? Prisoners, murderers, who are those? This is one thing that I taught my kids not to hate. I don't want them to hate and be prejudiced. But I cannot stand when they say they didn't know it, because I saw them hanging out of the windows.
Were you ever able, did anyone ever talk to you or to any of the other? There was never any contact.
We had, every 20 girls, there was this SS woman, devils with their shotgun on both sides. Now, we worked in the factory out there, and they made a shift, so we had no day and no night. You went to work 12 noon, and you came back 12 midnight. So you actually had no day and no night, because as soon as you came to this top floor there, you as much as we could, we washed, and even going to the bathroom was restricted. Now just visualize that.
How did they restrict that?
Well, they said this group will go at that time, this group will go at that time.
And what happened if you had to go in between?
You just didn't. Or you just... Depends where you were and how you... Luckily, we were young. The only reason we survived was because we were so young. And our bodies were still taking the abuse. That was the only... How did we, I remember one day they didn't send us to work. And they locked us up on the top floor, and all the SS disappeared. So we looked out, there were windows. And we heard they had oh my God, the bombs were falling. The
air raid.
Air raid. Yeah, I'm forgetting words, I'm
That's
so...
all right.
Air raid. We could hear it upstairs. And everybody was running to the shelters. The reason they had us on the top floor was that we were 2,000 young women. There was a plane factory. And the planes, the Allies, did know that we are there. So they didn't bomb it. Everything was bombed. This was the day they bombed this Dresden. And we had for many, like day and night, it was fire. Nothing. There was no night, because that's how when they were bombing it, they had no night. It wasn't dark because everything was burning. They did not build it in this little town, Freiburg. We saw women leaving carriages with children running to the shelter. They did not bomb this building because they knew they had knowledge. They had, in many cases, they had knowledge that that we are there.
Did you know that then?
No. I found that out after they started moving us out. My sister's foreman. I would work with my sister. It was so unbelievable. One machine next to the other.
Did they know you were sisters?
They didn't ask. But at that time, but everyone else knew that we are sisters because we talked to each other. I mean, there were many sisters. And he happened to be a communist. Very strong communist. He used to come to my sister and make a fist like this and say to my sister in German, wir fighten, wir siegen, which means we are fighting and we're succeeding. So this foreman, after they when everything calmed down a little bit, after the bombing, we went back to the factory, said that the Allies know that we are there. That's why they lock us up there. That's why they put us on the top floor. And we were there, and we were working, and it was horrendous. And many of us were killed. Many of our friends were killed by this. We had this horrendous woman. There was one man SS man. The rest were all SS women. And she had to be a devil. She had to be a devil. She had to be a monster when she was born. I told you we had these wooden shoes, and we walked in the snow. And if you have a wooden shoe, you walk in the snow, it builds up the snow. It just builds it up, and you're taller and you're taller. It becomes so terribly uncomfortable that you can't move. And we're marching from this factory into where we are living now, and it's midnight. And they have those spotlights going on, every once in a while, flashlight going to see if everybody is, these SS women on the side. And one of the girls that was in the last row could not walk anymore. So she was like a few steps behind. They grabbed her. And no sooner did we come home, the reason she had that much snow on that wooden shoe. She couldn't move. They said she tried to run away. So she was Oberschaftführerin, which means the top. She called all of us and she said, now I'm going to show you what happens to somebody that wants to run away. And she proceeded to kill her in front of us. Then she took another one that she thought that was once, that she killed that 17-year-old girl right in front of us. And then she thought another one, so she was beating her she beat her for such a long time that you could see the eyes of the girl that she was gone, and sure enough, she lost her mind, but I don't know why they let her live. She was liberated with us, but she was crazy. She never recuperated.
We're going to have to cut tape in a few minutes. You stayed in Freiburg for how long?
Until about March of 45.
The war was still on.
By now, the Russians are coming, the French are coming, the English are coming, the Americans are coming. And what they're trying to do is push us away so we would not be caught alive. It was known as the Death March, the men were marching, us they put in the trains. And we were taken through Czechoslovakia, stopped once in a while. They gave us like a spoon of sugar a day. That was the nourishment.
Okay. 22nd, 1992, Museum of Jewish Heritage Video History Project. My name is Naomi Rappaport. I am speaking to Genia Litwok, and this is tape 3. Genia, I'm going to go back for one thing which I forgot to ask you before. In the Lodz ghetto, did you have any personal contact with Rimkowski?
Never.
Never. Okay. Okay. We left you in the last tape in Freiburg. You were leaving Freiburg.
Yes.
And let's start from there.
Okay. The leaving process isn't a big thing because they just call us to an appeal, and they remember we have no belongings. We have one dress. We have one blanket that serves as a coat, and a piece of soap, and that's about it. So there is I don't have to go into the room to get my belongings. They call us to and they say, you're going down, and we're going into, we're leaving. And that's about it. So I just hold on to my sister, and everybody else holds on to whoever they are with. And now again, we go in fives, and we got into trains, cattle trains, and we had no idea, but we knew from, my sister already told, this foreman was saying that the Russians and the Allies are coming close, so they want to get rid of us. They don't want us to be the witnesses, so they're trying to get rid, they're pushing us.
Is this your first knowledge about what was going on?
Yes, probably. I didn't know how soon or what's going on. Absolutely no information, because by that time we didn't realize it, but Poland was already liberated by Russia.
And you knew about the bombings?
We knew that they're bombing. This we saw. So we know that they're in trouble because they bombed this big town, destroyed, the Allies destroyed Dresden, so they must be in trouble. I forgot to mention, while this was going on, all of us were dancing the horror. Even though we thought the bomb will fall and kill us, we didn't care. As long as they're doing something to them, we didn't care. We were dancing the horror while the bombs were falling, thinking if it falls, it's just as well. We'd rather be killed by them than by the Germans. So we really didn't even, nobody gave it a thought, nobody was afraid. I forgot to mention that's a very, interesting thing, that no one was afraid. We just said it's better this way. Okay, now we are on the way in those cattle cars, and they do not give us much food. We're going through different towns, countries we don't know. But one night we stop someplace and we hear the language, and it's Czechoslovakia. And they stopped like overnight. They let us go down, and no bathrooms. We would just go down for a few minutes, and the food was almost no food. People were dying in those cars, fainting. At one point, now we're leaving Czechoslovakia already, going towards Austria, and at one point my sister fainted. So there was just a little window, if you know what the cars look like, where they would transport cattle. It's just a little window, so everybody wants a little fresh air, and so they're making room for my sister to have this, but they didn't help. She was fainting, so someone started knocking on the wall of the train. Someone is fainted. There were so many fainting, they didn't care. But for some reason, assessment opened the door, and not the door, he pushed it open. He said, "Which one is fainting?" So they pointed to my sister. So he walked over and he smacked her. He smacked her with such force that until today she has a big scar right here. He split her neck about 3 inches. Now, how she survived, and there was an army, old men, because by that time old men were taken into the German army because the young ones were being killed. And we saw, he was standing and watching this, and tears were coming down his eyes. The first time I saw a German that had some feeling. He saw this blood coming out, and then he closed the door to the assessment, and we tried to, there happened to be a girl that was knew what she was doing, so she was holding it. Everybody was tearing the dresses to give her light dresses to wrap it up, and she survived. She has a big, ugly scar. It goes like that. My sister is beautiful and very successful businesswoman, and she will not go to plastic surgery. She will not fix that scar. She wants this everyone to see this. Anyway, and now we're arriving in Mauthausen. We're arriving after, I don't remember how long. We're arriving in Mauthausen. Mauthausen is a very big camp. Only men. There were never women there. And this is very close to the end of the war. So they change again. When you from one camp to another, they change your clothes. So they take this dress that you wore for 9 months. They have no dresses because they're men. So they give us pajamas, men's pajamas. All right, but this was the first time that we knew that they were in trouble, because there were a lot of men walking around, not in stripes, but in blue uniforms. And these were non-Jewish guys, Polacks, Czechs. Between them were Jews who had Polish papers. And they saw these women, and they start whispering to us, because now the SS isn't so, they see the end is near. So they told us that they're in trouble, that we just have to hold on, and they gave
In what
us,
language?
what language? Polish, Czech, what language, whatever you can understand, Czechoslovakian, but mostly Polish. And we happened to find one man that was a Jew who had made believe he was a Polak, and he came in and he told us that just take it easy, it's near, just hold on to each other. All right, so now they put us in barracks, horrible barracks. In those pajamas, we walking around in pajamas because there is nothing else. They have nothing for women. But we did get from these guys, they once in a while they would come in and give us a Red Cross package, which was the worst thing they could do with food. The Red Cross, they had a can of peanut butter, and so we were sharing it between us. But some girls, because we didn't eat for such a long time, got diarrhea, and it was bad. It was so bad, people were getting sick. Now it's May 3rd, I think, May 3rd, 1945, and there is like a false alarm. Somebody runs into the barracks and screams, the Americans are here. So everyone, a lot of people were very sick. A lot of women were very sick, but everyone runs out to greet the American armed force. It was a false alarm. The Germans were standing there, and they killed so many. They were just standing there with a gun, and they're just whoever they wanted, they killed. So we were back in the barracks, whoever made it back. Now, May 5th, the American Army Rainbow Division is liberating Mauthausen. And again, someone is coming in and screaming, the Americans are here, and nobody moves. Nobody goes, we just sitting, waiting. And the feeling of all of a sudden, the door opens, and there are Americans coming, it's incredible. Anyway, this was
time they
yes, they did liberate us. And they came in and they looked at us, we were laying there like skeletons. And next to us, which was the most horrible scene, and everybody writes about it in books, there were thousands and thousands of Jewish men, skeletons laying in a heap. They didn't even burn the bodies. They were just laying there behind the barbed wire. All the Jewish guys were
Had you been
naked.
seeing this all the time?
Yes, well, we saw it, we saw it. And we knew they were Jews because the others were dressed. And it was terrible. It was incredible. People were saying that some people were even eating bodies. I never saw it. But it was so incredible. Skeletons, heaps, thousands and thousands of men. All right, now we have the American Army. In the American Army, they want to do something for us. They look at us and my God, they could not even comprehend. It was such, you can imagine these human beings that don't look like human beings. And they said, first, they brought a lot of food, which was a little bit of a mistake. Because everybody got diarrhea, and I would say that a quarter of the people died of diarrhea because they started eating and they had empty stomachs and all this. It was horrendous. And then they realized that the army doctors came in, American doctors. They came in and they realized what was going on, so they stopped it and they started giving us light food. They were cooking soups, no more peanut butter and no more these rations, because every American soldier wanted to do something. They walked over and they said, do you want to go to town and get some clothes? I'll take you to an Austrian house and you can take some clothes. But nobody, who could move? We couldn't move. But they tried to give us army blankets and some things. And slowly they developed, the system where my sister was well, I was sick. I I had terrible pains in my stomach, and I really didn't know what it was. But I was getting attacks, and I was very sick, and I was screaming. And I forgot to mention to you that the Germans used to give me morphine. I don't know why they didn't kill me, but they gave me morphine to shut me up because I had such bad pains. I had gallstones, which I didn't know at 17. All right, now, when they were coming, it's 3-4 days after liberation, and every day there's an inspection of the American Army's doctors coming in, and MPs, and looking at and it happened to be that I had an attack, and I was crying. And once one doctor bent over and he talked to me, but I didn't. And my sister spoke a little English, so she said that I'm in pain. 2 days later, an ambulance came in with AMPs, with a stretcher, and they took me. They took me to a GI hospital. Now you have to picture this. I'm a Jewish girl from Poland. Didn't speak too much. I just didn't understand English. The first doctor that I met in this GI hospital was a Chinese doctor. I just could not believe it. Now, they took me to help me, but it was a shock to me. My sister really didn't know where I was until I was there 2 weeks. They were for observation. In the meantime, Jewish doctors came out of, from the camp, 3 doctors, which I have on that picture, and they sent me to an Austrian hospital with the American MPs. With that, this was a hospital of sisters, nuns, and they said that if I die, if they kill me, they're going to be responsible for it.
And your sister still did not know where you were?
Yeah, she knew at that point. So now everybody knew where I was already, because I wasn't the only one, but I needed, so they were so scared that they sent for a very big doctor, a surgeon, to operate on me. And he asked me if he can, I was little, I was shaved, so he says, wird man schneiden, Kleiner, which means, can I cut you, little one? I said, yes, please. I didn't even ask questions. But I knew that the American Army is watching, that he won't do he's not going to kill me. Because there were a lot of soldiers, American soldiers, killed 2-3 days after they liberated the Austrians. Awful. They hanged 40 soldiers in the forest. And we were already liberated, so they were afraid they were going to kill me. Anyway, I was in this hospital. The nuns were. There was a big sign over my head. This is after the war. It said Jude, Jew. So the first visit that I had from my sister, she made such a scandal. She said, how dare you put this thing over her head? It's after the war. And she tore it to pieces, but they still did not give up. Anyway, all right, this is how I met my husband, I have to tell you. I'm coming to it. My sister was working now for the American Air Force, because she
Where were you?
I was in Linz, in a hospital. Linz is the town, Bindermichel is a suburb. Hart, where I told you where I was, is a suburb of Linz. Linz is the town where Hitler was born.
And that's where you were in the hospital?
Yes, that's where I'm in the hospital.
Okay, so now we have you in June 1945.
Right.
After liberation.
Yes. They already making a camp, displaced person camp, in Binderweg.
You have some pictures. Are those the pictures from Linz?
Okay.
From Hart, or?
This is a picture of...
just under your chin.
Of the camp, and we are sitting, I don't know how much you can see, but we are sitting in the windows. It's 3 floors, and we are so happy to be liberated and be together that we are sitting with our feet up outside the window on the 3rd floor. Okay.
And that is where?
Bindermichel. That's the displaced person camp that the Americans created for all the people that they took with them from Mauthausen.
I see.
Because Mauthausen was divided into 4 parts. That part of Austria, German, English, French, English, French, Russian, and American. And they said,
You can take the picture up.
whoever wants to go with us, they cross the Danube. So we went with them.
Yeah.
This is my sister working for the Air Force. She spoke some English. Okay, now I will show you. I worked in a makeshift hospital after. This is already a year and a half after that we had to govern ourselves and help ourselves. These are 3 Jewish doctors and volunteers that help people. There was we did everything in that Bin der Michel for ourselves. Okay.
Which, are you in there? In that picture?
Yes, I'm in this picture.
Which one is you?
I'm right here next, on the right, the first one on the right.
First one.
Okay. I met my husband while in the hospital. My sister, working for the Air Force, has gotten some extra medication, and she wanted someone to bring it to me because she was working. So she just, in this camp, in Demiho, she came across my husband. She didn't know him, but he looked like he could be trusted or something. She asked him, would you mind going to my sister who's in the hospital and bring her this medication? And he said, yes, I wouldn't mind, I'm going. So he took a bus and came to the hospital during the day to visit me. That's how I met my husband. He never left.
And that was when?
Okay, now...
when was that?
That was 45, June, July, because I was in the hospital for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, and then after they operated on me, I came back. However, my incision was open for 6 months because it would not heal. So I had a suture for 6 months open. And until, because of the nourishment, I was like a skeleton. So, but after 6 months, it closed up. I have an ugly scar, but I was okay. They took out, I had gallstones at 17, which is quite unusual. And I came back to camp, and then I started working in this makeshift hospital. All of us worked. The only one that worked out was my sister and another girl that spoke English. She worked for the Air Force.
And what was life like for you and your sister, for you in
It was,
camp?
well, we were happy to be alive. It was very, we didn't have much, but we had a dress or two or something. We were dancing and first, which is very important, there were lists coming from all camps, who is alive. We searched for family, if anybody is alive. And lists were coming from Palestine. My sister and I were trying to get to Palestine illegally, and we were caught in Italy and sent back to Bin der Michel. We were caught on an American truck covered with, there were 8 girls, covered with blankets, trying to go to Cyprus and to Palestine.
Who caught you?
In Italy, the police.
The Italian police?
Yes. And they sent us right back to the... And then when I met my husband, he had an aunt here who sent him papers. And we got married, so he made papers for me to come to the United States too. My sister was a war bride. She met her husband, who was a pilot in the Air Force, a lieutenant pilot, and she married from Texas. So she went to Texas. And from all the people, she's the only one that I have. We have been separated. Thank God that we can afford now to see each other, but there was a time where we didn't see each other for a long time. She lived in Texas, then she lived in Salt Lake City, 14 years. Now she's in Seattle. But now we see each other quite often, and we talk on a daily basis, every single day.
When did you come to
the United States? I came May 18, 1949. And like I said, my husband had an aunt here, and we stayed with this aunt for 2 weeks.
Where?
In the Bronx, in New York City, in the Bronx. She had no children, and it wasn't very pleasant for us. So we just...
Why?
Because she wasn't a very pleasant person, her husband. They didn't understand how to have anyone in the house. Her husband asked me not to take a bath because the warm water cost money. One of those things. I really don't want to get into this.
Fine. Yeah.
But it wasn't pleasant. So 2 weeks after we were in the, my sister did come from Texas when we arrived and begged us to come to Texas with her.
Your sister came before you did?
Oh, she came in 47 as a war bride.
Yeah.
She didn't come like we came, you know. She came through France, Cannes. She was, but she came in 49 in May. She said, I know this end because I stayed with her for one day. She said, come with me to the, but my husband knew that his parents and sister are coming from Russia. So he didn't want to leave them here, so we didn't. And so 2 weeks after we arrived in this country, we had gotten jobs. This was the end of May for Decoration Day weekend in Mount Freedom, New Jersey, in a hotel. My husband became a busboy. It was for Decoration Day weekend in a Jewish hotel. And I was supposed to help with children as helping the counselor and also make the beds if need be. So that's what it was. We stayed there a whole summer. My first tip that somebody wanted to give me, I ran away because, my God, how can I take a tip? I mean, this is different mentality, you know, coming from where I come from. I was so embarrassed. So people used to send me tips by mail, and the owner of the hotel said, you'll never get anything, you'll never get anything. You have to stay when they pay the bill and wait with a hand. I said, no, I won't. Anyway, we came back in September with pretty enough to get us an apartment and start looking for work, which we did. And at one time, my husband had 3 jobs, I had 2 jobs. We waited 2 years to have our first baby. Ziggy's parents came, and we rented an apartment, and they stayed with us for 4 years. And his sister.
You had never met his parents before?
I met them I met them in Europe when we in 46. We didn't get married until they came from Russia. He will get into this a little bit more. Yes, I did meet them. They again stayed with us in Bindermich. They stayed with us, but they never worked in the United States because they were like in their 60s, late 50s, 60s. So even though my daughter was born in 51, I still went to work right, I think 3 weeks after.
What kind of work did you do? I
was working on in the jewelry district on Canal Street in a wholesale place. I was selling jewelry. I was pretty good at it. I lived in Manhattan at that time, and I used to take 2 subways, and I was pretty good at it. They gave me a job that I was able to see my child. I came at 10 and left at 3. I worked until my last week of pregnancy because we had parents to support, and then I went back. And again, 2.5 years later, my son was born. And I went back to work again, but then when we moved away from Manhattan, my husband had started his own business, and I did bookkeeping for him for 7 years. I worked until 5 years ago.
Did you maintain a relationship with people from the camps or from your town? Or
always.
Do you still?
We have a group of, it's a good question, because I wanted to make a point out of that. The reason why I can talk about it is that the same friends I had in Linz, in Austria, are still my friends today. What happened after the war is that we were talking to each other. What we didn't realize is that we were having group therapy. Everyone talked. Everyone talked about their experience, and we got it out of, out of our system. We constantly talk about it. Now, in my sister's case, her husband was an American. She has forgotten how to speak Polish, but that's not important. But she wasn't able to share with anyone her experience, and it took her until 1985, 84, I think, that she was able to make a documentary, and now she's talking about it all the time. But she was never able to talk at all, about the camp at all.
Yeah. You had a picture there that you showed me
Yes.
of a reunion of...
I have a picture.
Of a reunion, or is that in the packet?
Yes, this is this is in Washington, D.C., gathering people from all over the world. And I'm here with my sister, or am I taking a picture? You can't see us. You can just see that here we are. This is when we're listening to the speeches. This is my sister and me.
What year is that?
This is in the 80, I don't remember exactly, 84, 85, because this was a second gathering. There was one in Jerusalem, one in, and these are the same friends, there's my sister here too, that I had in Linz, Austria, and they're still my friends.
Are you on that picture?
I think I'm taking this picture. There's my husband is here. This is my best friend. That's my sister. Now, I know these people since 1945, and we are still very good friends.
Can you hold that up? I didn't get a clear shot.
You didn't
The
get
last
that
one.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
How much have you shared with your children?
Okay, our children, when we decided to have children, Ziggy and I, we said we are going to talk to them when they'll be able to understand. We're not going to scare them. We also decided not to put prejudice into them, if we can help it, when they were very young, because it starts from the cradle. And try not to forget and not to forgive, but not to hate. You should never forget and never forgive.
How did you do this?
Well, we started, I don't know, we just did not, I don't know, I just don't know, I remember when the book Exodus came out, we just talked about it to our daughter, who is a psychologist. We talked about it, and she said she knew before Exodus, the book came out, that she knew we are survivors. We are surrounded with survivors' friends, and the children talk to each other, and they know we speak different languages, and that we did survive camps. But when this book came out and the movie, we took them, and then when we came home, we were discussing it. There was a character there that was played by Sal Mineo that was in Auschwitz. And I told the kids at that point that I was in Auschwitz, and my husband told them the experience. And from that time on, they asked every questions about the camp. We also emphasized one thing about Israel. We emphasized that Israel is the most important thing to exist, because if there was an Israel in the 30s, in the early 40s, we would have not been. They would have bombed the railroad track to Auschwitz. They would have done something. They would have helped us. So it is very important that Israel exists. Our son is a very strong Zionist.
Yeah,
our
you
daughter,
had some pictures
yes,
of your...
they both belong to Junior B'nai B'rith. They went to the Jerusalem gathering. It's my daughter in Yad Vashem. I don't know how good that you can see that. And there is the same friends went to the gathering with our daughter and our son in Jerusalem. And Stephen was, after he graduated high school, he went to Israel and he talked about it. He was in Boston in MIT, and he talked in all the colleges about Israel. He became like a shaliach. Do you know what a shaliach is?
A messenger.
Okay, he was really not being paid by the Israeli, but he talked to students, and every time during the vacation he would volunteer for a kibbutz while he was in MIT, and take a group of young men, women with him. When he graduated MIT, he came to us and he said, now I'm going to move to Israel. I don't know for how long, but I'm moving. Now, you always told us how important this for Israel too, so you cannot say to me, I can't go, because I'm going. You cannot be hypocrite. Now, Stephen went, and though he was after college, and he did not need to go to army, he went to the army. This is one of the pictures where Stephen is in the army. Because he had this high education, MIT especially, they made him a chief medic. And he was trained in Tel Aviv and at the hospital Tel HaShemer. You know that hospital? That's where the soldiers are.
Yeah.
He was trained there for 18 months. And he was, by the way, he was in the Lebanon action. They don't call it a war. He was in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And he witnessed and did affect him a little bit. He stayed in Israel 10 years. At this moment, he's here with his wife and children in the United States, but they are going back. We don't know when, a year or two, 3, but he's going back. Very strong Zionist. Our daughter is too, but I guess they were brought up this way, so we can't.
What stands out most in your memory of this period of your life, this whole saga from 1939 on?
After 39.
From 1939.
39, well, I would say that Auschwitz is probably the worst time of my life. It was Auschwitz, the day my mother died in the ghetto. The day where I had to, when they caught me on the street and I had to come home by myself, and I was positive they're going to kill me. Right after liberation, this was before liberation, when we got that food and everybody was dying around us. There are many things. If I think of good things, if the holidays come, the older I get, the more I think about my grandmother's house and the holidays, and especially Seder's, which was so wonderful. And all the people and all the family, and I try to do this. My daughter is, every time we have a holiday, I mean, I'm so happy that Stephen is now, for the last 3 years, here with his family, so we can have Seder's. And I try to remember, you know, and do it the way we do it from the first page to the last, the Haggadah, because we just, tradition is very important. Every Friday night, my children come for dinner. Tradition is very important, and it seems that my daughter-in-law is doing exactly the same thing, though she was brought up on a kibbutz. And, you know, on a kibbutz is a different way of living. She is, Friday night is become, and this kibbutz is not religious, but she has become, she's doing exactly, if I don't make Friday night, she makes traditional Friday night and cooks and bakes. And the kids, Jonathan is 7.5, and he goes to Solomon Schechter, that's a private Hebrew school. Daniel is 4 and speaks, they're all bilingual. She does not speak English to her children. And Anat is 1.5 years. It's a little girl, and they both, all 3 of them are bilingual. My son speaks English to them, and my daughter knows Hebrew. So it seems that it's going to go on, which makes us very, very happy, because of the tradition will go on. And I'm happy it worked out that way. I'm happy to be alive, and I'm going to go on talking about this because I don't want this to happen again. And it's already coming. Nazis are all over. And we better be aware of it and not make fun out of them, because that's how Hitler started. They said he was a maniac. You have to pay attention.
I think we're about to cut tape, right? I want to thank you, Genia Litwok, very much.
I want to thank you for doing this. It is for our, I'm very happy to do it. I hope young people will listen.
I hope so, too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cut tape.
Okay.